You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. Your daily delivery of all things dog pound, LGB on the LOB, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, and Mr. Garrett Bush. Anybody's new, first time. Obviously, some changes being made here this week, not only with the show going to YouTube, bringing in Garrett Bush as your co-host here of Locked On Browns, part of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. I'm sure all you 92-3 fans know Garrett from Saturday mornings in the barbershop. So it's been fun. So as we are getting through here, appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen, day in, day out. Make sure, whatever podcast app you use, you subscribe to the show, 5-star ratings, written reviews, and YouTube. Listen, guys, key with YouTube is subscribe. I know some of you may not navigate over. That's fine. I know some of you have tried and are going to try. That's fine as well. That subscribe button, key, huge, for the potential and the growth of the show. So please make sure you take care of that. Interesting when you get to know somebody as a co-host. Obviously, your conversations pick up more. You talk more football. And things I have mentioned is, obviously Garrett being a former player, played defensive line at Ohio University. As everybody knows, I was a wide receiver in college. So I'm going to, value maybe some of what Garrett's opinions are defensive line related. But now we've gotten our first little bit of a problem here as far as, and maybe, I don't know if maybe, Garrett's riding the high of, the contract that Mr. TJ Watt received down in Pittsburgh. But we're going to do a segment, and we're going to talk about some AFC North defensive ends. Garrett sent me over some rankings, and I was stunned, misbelief. I was just blown away. Garrett Bush does not have Myles Garrett as his top pass rusher in the AFC North. And I'm sure you're all going to boo and hiss the man a little bit. But one thing I've noticed about Garrett is he will never back down from what he believes, never back down from a take that he feels might have a little heat to it, a little habanero, if you will. Go ahead, Garrett.
Well, like you said, we get an opportunity to talk a little bit with one another. And we was coming out and we was doing this list. And so we just breaking down the list and ranking throughout the AFC North. You're trying to figure out, all right, well, let's see who your top, 4 defensive ends are in the AFC North. And we got to the top, and Myles Garrett wasn't at the top of mine. And it was like, what you mean? Now, I'm going to preface something. I do think that Myles Garrett is the most physically gifted person, a defensive lineman in the AFC North. However, I'm going to differentiate and tell you why, why I got him is where I got him on my list, right? Just and give some reasons as to why we want to do that. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number 4, when I sent you the list, I got Jadeveon Clowney, right? So I know he's a free agent, but for our purposes, we're looking to get him back. So, he's a guy.
Every reporter seems to utter the same thing. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And the question most likely is late June, after everything is done, as far as in the Browns say, okay, everybody go behave yourself. Have a great summer. We'll see you in a month. Remember, no trouble. Just keep yourselves out of trouble. And then when there's no responsibilities other than showing up for training camp is maybe when Jadeveon sneaks in like a thief in the night, signs that contract, goes back to Carolina, and then comes back a little later.
Yeah, listen, he wants no parts of training camp, none of that. So we with no worries on that one. But the reason I got Jadeveon Clowney coming in at 4 is just because of his skill set. Now, we've already known about his athletic ability. One of the knocks on Jadeveon Clowney was the fact that he wasn't known as a 2 to 3 move guy. When it comes to pass rush ability, he also is a little stiff. He doesn't bend as well as some of the other guys when you need to run the hoops and get around and you're rushing the passer. Also, he doesn't have a signature move that he really kind of goes to. to get to the quarterback. He doesn't have too many counters, but what he does have is he has a mean inside move. His inside move is so quick that he usually, gets out leveraged a little bit, but he's so fast, so athletic. His inside move is devastating. And so that's what he likes to do to set you up a little bit. Now, the problem is he could be higher on this list, and a lot of other people want him to be higher on this list. We know about the athletic ability, but one thing that his best part of his game is playing the run. If you look, PFF has him consistently graded as an elite guy on the run. He does a really good job. He's just super disruptive. His burst off the line of scrimmage and that inside move can be used to disrupt zone plays, outside zone plays. So for me, Jadeveon Clowney is probably the fourth best defensive end in the AFC North as far as this list, in my opinion.
I don't necessarily have an issue there. Trey Hendrickson over the last couple of years led to going to Cincinnati last year in a big money deal. I think when you think defensive end, a lot of guys, it's always about the sacks. And I even remember being in college. One of my good friends, one of my roommates at the time, was one of our defensive ends. He was a solid guy who graded out well every week. There was another defensive end who led the team in sacks. Got ripped every meeting for this, that, and the other thing. You're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that, and guess what? Never affected the playing time because the production basically superseded the fact that he was not doing A, B, and C, those types of things. So it gave for, that opportunity. For Jadeveon, a lot of it is, and I think a lot of it is just because he was former number 1 overall pick. And if you want to say, has he maybe not met that bar? That's fair. Is he still a really, really good football player when he's healthy? He is. And, when you see a guy that is this freak of nature type of athlete, the way he's built, long, can do so many other things, I think everybody expects that he should do all those other things and get 17 sacks a season. Maybe that bar is set a little bit too high. Hendrickson, a little bit more of a sound player. You look at him old school, you just see nothing but bare arms, no gloves, no tape anywhere. He's not covered himself up. It almost kind of looks like, he was out of the game and then they had to throw him back in real quick because there's no accessories. It's a uniform. It's a helmet. Let's go out.
Right.
But I'm also with you, though. I mean, and, I do love Jadeveon Clowney, but I think when you look at it this in the ranking of pass rushers, I do believe that most people are always going to say is, let's look at the top sack guys. And if you're consistent at it, it's not going to be a question of, what other tools you have in the bag. Elvis Dumervil, prime example. What was he? Maybe 6'1", 250 on a good day if he had a good meal. Everything about the guy said he should transition a linebacker. But he had one calling card. He could get after the passer. He could register sacks. He could register, hits on the quarterback. And he was never moved. In the run game, he was a liability. That's why he became a guy who moved around later on in his career as a third pass rusher, somebody that came in nickel dime situations. So you've got to be able to, you will get away with some, basically negatives at the position as long as the sack total and the getting after the quarterback is there. That's just the way it works. But it's going to get a little interesting here as we go to segment 2, because Garrett's going to state his case. I'm going to state some cases for mine. And, it was funny because actually we just went through this here now with the Browns twice in a row. Myles Garrett 2 years ago got his contract extension, was the highest paid edge. And until a month later, TJ Watt got his money. Denzel Ward, I think he had a nice, 27-day run as the highest paid cornerback in the NFL. Jair Alexander just got his money. But we're going to get into this one. This might be, one we can get, a little bit of interesting one here because, Garrett is going to go probably a route that most folks wouldn't be expecting out of Browns podcast.
Just so we're tallying at home. So you cool with Jadeveon Clowney at 4, and Trey Hendrickson at 3, correct?
I am okay with that, and the reason I do believe is because, and as I was trying to explain, is most people are going to go by sack numbers first. And also this is why Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett worked so well. Myles has certainly improved over the years about the discipline of not getting inside on the run. But this is something that Jadeveon Clowney has always had. We're going to get back here. I'll let Garrett open up this next segment after we get obviously, a little love to the sponsors in here and state his case, because this one's where it's going to maybe kind of get a little bit off the rails. So stick around. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, Garrett Bush, your latest Locked On Browns. Everybody knows about our good friends over at Built Bar. Imagine dipping your finger into a plastic tub of birthday cake frosting and then opening your eyes and realizing that it was only 150 calories and 16 grams of protein. That is what it is like to eat a birthday cake puff from Built Bar. If you like sweet, if you need the push, you need the energy, these things are you. I just received my birthday cake puffs, and I have never had anything like this before. They're available right now, and we can't promise that they will be there tomorrow. So go get them today at Built.com. And if you haven't tried the puffs, I'll let you in on a little secret, because that's what friends do. A chocolate-covered marshmallow protein bar. Yeah, you heard me. 100 delicious flavored marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. Make every day your birthday with Built birthday cake puffs. Built has taken the delicious experience of biting into a fresh slice of birthday cake, and they've covered it in 100% white chocolate and even added sprinkles. With 150 calories, 16 grams of protein, and only 9 grams of sugar, this limited time flavor is an amazing option if you are looking for a healthy way to get flavor and variety in your day. All Built puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means with Built, you can get healthy and actually enjoy doing it. And they are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Go to Built.com to get birthday cake puffs right now. Go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. Get 15% off your order. Again, the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com.
Welcome back to the Locked On podcast. Of course, it's me, G. Bush, and your co-host, Jeff. If you missed it, we just got into our top 4 rankings for the AFC North, and we have so far Jadeveon Clowney with the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, he's not with the Browns yet, but free agent. We have him coming in at 4. Trey Henderson, I thought he did a good job, and the Bengals, really helped themselves out a little bit by going to the Super Bowl. It doesn't hurt when you can sack Patrick Mahomes and get to the Super Bowl and really show you what you can do. I thought he had one of his best years as a pro, so he came in at number 3. This is where the controversy comes in. Obviously, if anybody knows football, the top 2 guys in this division are one, Myles Garrett, and another guy who wears black and yellow. I'll let Jeff tell you about him. But let's get to Myles Garrett and why I have him at number 2. Now, to me, Myles Garrett, by far, he's a much better athlete. If you talk about prospects, Myles Garrett has probably the most God-given ability, physical ability in the division of any other defensive ends. He can bend, and that's an elite. Even though he weighs more than Jadeveon Clowney, is taller, is bigger, he has way more flexibility and bend in his hips and knees. He's one would argue he's probably just as fast, being a little bigger. He's disruptive. He can do pretty much a lot of things. He can inside, swim move, push, pull, bull rush. He got all the moves. Here's the reason, and it's only one reason. And people say, well, he got all that, G. Bush. Why is he not number 1 on your list? I said, okay, well, we got to go. It's about the production. If you take a look at Myles Garrett, now, he's done some things. 2017, he came into the league. TJ Watt, 2017, came into the league. The first year, both of those guys had 7 sacks in 2017. So they're even, right? Myles Garrett comes in at 2018. He puts up 13.5 sacks. You're like, wow, that's dope, man. TJ Watt, 2018, he puts up 13 sacks. So at this point, it looks like Myles Garrett up to 2018 has the advantage. 2019 comes around, and Myles Garrett, that was the year where he had the helmet throwing situation. He lost about 6 games during that year, but he still had 10 sacks during the year. TJ Watt got to play the whole year. 2019 has 14.5 sacks. You go to 2020, Myles Garrett has a solid year. He had 12 sacks in 2020. And this is where TJ Watt starts to put it on. He comes back after following the 2019 season with 14.5 sacks. He comes back with 15 in 2020. And so that was a year in which, Myles Garrett had 12. And then Myles Garrett had his best year as far as the sack totals. I thought he was well on his way if he could have kept his pace up to be one of the candidates for Defensive Player of the Year. He had 16 sacks last year. And one thing you look at it is combination of tackles really went up. He had 51 tackles, which is a career high for him. But you say, okay, well, what did TJ Watt do? In 2021, he got loose. And the man got 64 tackles combined, 22 and a half sacks. Not to mention, TJ Watt also has 4 career interceptions. Myles Garrett does not have those. So for me, is Myles Garrett a better player athletically? Would I probably take him if you ask me who would you start a team with? I would probably take Myles Garrett. But on production, I would have to, on a slight edge, say TJ Watt just based on the production.
I'm sorry. I was going to pick up the phone and call Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers and see if he needed a guest host. He didn't answer, so we'll have to wait on that. Here's a couple of things here, though. Obviously, you marked the career trajectory arc for both players. With Myles, 2019, obviously a substantial amount of time missed. Still, by far, that was the most unhappy post-game victory show I have ever done in my life. And we told everybody there, we won't see Myles till next season. And everybody, oh, no. And look, for whatever you believe happened that evening, you can't take a man's helmet off and hit him with it. Doesn't matter. Doesn't even matter what you think Mason Rudolph said. What if he actually did say what most people maybe think he did say? You still can't take somebody's helmet off and smack him over the head with it. 2020. One thing I think you're missing in that is Myles Garrett going through COVID and the fact that we didn't see the same Myles Garrett prior to, COVID. He was literally on a pace for Defensive Player of the Year, it seemed, got COVID. And he wasn't a guy that had COVID and just was out. Like Myles was literally, you saw pictures of him watching games, covered in blankets, was not feeling well, really ailed him, and certainly did not, when he came back, was not 100%. 2021. Obviously, Myles started out fantastic, 16 sacks. But if you do remember, going into the Christmas Day game against Green Bay Packers, Myles had a groin issue. Everybody just said, and Myles even said, I'll be out there. Myles had no choice. There was nobody else to put out there at that point. And I do remember, and actually, Garrett and I talked with host Peter Bukowski the other day. He was talking about the left tackle. They played like a third-string left tackle that day. He's like, wow, he did a pretty good job against Myles Garrett. I said, well, he did a pretty good job against half of Myles Garrett. Now, overall, the numbers certainly favor TJ Watt, but there are also some favorable positions for TJ Watt. TJ Watt never rushes against a left tackle. He always rushes against a right tackle. So it's a lot easier to get those numbers in that situation. The 22 and a half last year, James Hudson, God bless his heart. And the Browns at that point, realizing the season was getting away from him, are we going to play journeyman guys like Blake Hance, other guys? Are we going to get somebody that we drafted who we think maybe can be a part of an offensive line down the road? Are we going to get him reps? You put him out there against the guy who ended up being the Defensive Player of the Year and said, no help. Who needs it? And then after he got 1 sack, it'll be fine. 2 sacks, it'll be fine. And, Baker at the time threw a couple of balls early that were dropped. Then Baker was ending up being gun shy throwing the ball. And at that point, you probably figured for Baker, just throw the ball as soon as you possibly get it because TJ Watt is killing you.
Yeah.
There's just, for me also, the interceptions, we're not going to go that route. For me, I can't even equate that because TJ Watt is a linebacker. He is an outside linebacker. So there are positions in times where he is asked to drop into coverage. So, obviously he should have some of those. It would be an absolute disgrace, and we have certainly seen it at times with some defense coordinators for the Cleveland Browns where they decided to drop Myles Garrett into coverage, which is the biggest, stupidest thing anybody could ever do. But we're going to take this when we go into segment 3. The question is, and now we're done. We've done our Steelers talk. We've done our Bengals talk. But the question is Myles Garrett on a career arc that would possibly lead to him being enshrined in Garrett's hometown in the NFL Hall of Fame? after 5 years, I think this is a fun conversation to have. And obviously, you cross your fingers, knock on wood, for everything that it can be a sustainable career. Knowing that Myles is a tad bit of a different guy, maybe he won't be one of these guys that hangs on later on. But we're going to get to that, and we're going to talk about, is Myles Garrett on a career arc to being an NFL Hall of Famer? Be back in 1 second. Garrett Bush, Jeff Lloyd. It's the time of the year, guys. You have horse racing, you have the NBA playoffs, you have the NHL playoffs, you have MLB. Well, our partners at BetOnline continue to be the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, the Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, Garrett, this being said, and with just some things to go with here, Myles Garrett to this point in his career, 58.5 sacks through 5 years. Through 5 years of Myles Garrett. And now keep in mind, this is now Myles Garrett officially playing on his second contract in the NFL. You take 58.5 sacks, say he plays another 5 years, becomes a 10-year player, can keep these numbers where they're at, 117. And this is where it gets kind of tricky, because doing research for this, there's guys in that range sack total-wise. And the first thing is, it kind of blows your mind. That would put him in similar territory to a Von Miller, who everybody feels Von Miller obviously going to be, a Hall of Famer one day. But for me, there's some things that go along with this, Garrett, is the 117 sacks, that doesn't get you in. What else gets you in? How did you perform in the playoffs? To this point, Myles, obviously a very, very limited taste of what he's done in the playoffs. Do you get to a Super Bowl? Do you win a Super Bowl? Because we know the way this works when you talk about Hall of Fame candidates. Stats. How many times All-Pro? Super Bowl winner? Yes. If so, how many times? Defensive Player of the Year, if it is he's mentioned. All of these things are things that Myles hasn't achieved yet. In the grand scheme of the things, Myles doesn't care about those achievements. He wants his team to win, and he wants to go out there and play the best ball he can to help his team win. But so then the question would be, I guess, Mr. Bush, is do you feel that Myles Garrett is on the career trajectory arc that he's one day, and it'll be an interesting one to cut for a guy who's built like Myles Garrett, going to be getting one of those gold blazers?
Well, I kind of look at it like this. Like you said, we're talking about guys who got in, and I was looking at comparable guys that he can have a kind of a trajectory, like Jason Taylor. He played 15 seasons, right? 6 Pro Bowls, 233 games. He made the all-decade team, right? When you look at it, I think he ended up. Let me look at this. His best year. Best year, he had 18.5 sacks in 2002. He was NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He was 4-time All AFC. So he's a guy that I think, Myles Garrett, I don't know. He seems to have a lot more things going on. He's already been documented that he does. I don't think Myles Garrett is going to stop playing when he has nothing left in the tank. In other words, I think he'll play his 10, 11 years and gracefully bow out, and we'll say, wow, Myles Garrett had one of his best years. Why is he retiring? Because I think he wants to do other things. If you go back and you look, I think there's a couple of people you can compare him to, right? People don't remember how good Chris Dolman was, right? 150 sacks, 8 Pro Bowls, 15 seasons. I don't think Myles Garrett is going to play 15 seasons, and 150, I don't think he's going to get that. Kevin Green, 15 seasons, 160 sacks. That's 160. So look at all the years and the number of sacks. Now, we talked about the 117 to 120 range, right? So, Myles Garrett is going to have to still put together some seasons. I don't think he has a better resume at the end of the day than Kevin Green. So that's something we might not be able to look for. Richard Dent, 15 seasons, 4 Pro Bowlers, 137 and a half sacks. So he might not have that. And so it comes down to me. These are the two guys I most compare, Myles Garrett with as far as production. You got a guy like Howie Long. Howie Long, 3 All-Pro selections, 8 Pro Bowls, 13 seasons, but only 84 sacks, right?
Played on the interior, yep.
Yep, only 84. So that's a guy you can kind of pattern yourself with, and you say, okay, well, Myles Garrett might be on that level. And then my last guy, who I think Myles Garrett will have better sacks than, is Charles Haley. Charles Haley, 100.5 sacks. He had 5 Pro Bowls. He played 12 seasons, but this is really what put Charles Haley over the top. 5 Super Bowl rings. Anytime you get 5 rings, you got over 100 sacks. So these two guys are more comparable. I think that if he gets over 100 sacks, he needs to get a Defensive Player of the Year under his belt. It would help if the Browns won the Super Bowl, but you can't count on that. So I would say in the seasons 10 through 12, if he could put 7 more seasons together, keep hitting the Pro Bowls, get over 100 sacks, I think he ends up getting into the Hall of Fame if he can manage to get a Defensive Player of the Year award under his belt as well.
Yeah, I think, you definitely need, and look, Pro Bowls in this, Pro Bowls don't count, okay? So let's not bring that up. You can make a bunch of them, that's fine, and the way it's watered down to this point, I mean, oh, hey, I'll go because nobody else will go. All right, congratulations, you're going to the Pro Bowl. So the way we figure it here is obviously a Myles Garrett, this point is of his career is averaging 11.75 sacks per season. So you take that and you put it to 12. He plays 12 seasons. You're talking about a guy with 140 sacks. I don't care who you are. I don't care what team you played for. I don't care if you won a Super Bowl. I don't care if, you stood upside down, whatever you did. You're going to get to 140 sacks. You're in. That's it. It's done. It's over with. Myles, obviously, this is an interesting conversation because Myles is going to be a part of players now going further. And we see the tremendous statistical output we see from a lot of guys who are going to get the benefit of an extra regular season game every season. So, hey, that's something where if you say, hey, he got 7 years of, 1 extra game and, 3.5, 4 sacks. I do believe that if anybody is associated with the Cleveland Browns team that's going to win a Super Bowl, that's probably going to enhance it somehow, some way. I know there's always a lot of talk with Browns fans and certainly, Clay Matthews and his family about the Hall of Fame. And I'll be honest, I saw a lot of the Browns in that era. Back in those days, you only saw the teams that were good besides your local teams. The Browns were good, obviously, so they were on, in spotlights against teams. And Clay Matthews was an excellent, excellent player. But I think what hurt Clay Matthews is that Clay Matthews was also a really good pass rusher and also a really good linebacker. If Clay Matthews had the opportunity to either do, be just a pass rusher or just a linebacker and do those type of traditional things, I think because he was used in a combination of ways, it kind of maybe hurt what his chances were to be in the Hall of Fame. If he had just been a pass rusher, probably could have made it. He was a playmaking linebacker. If he had just done that, he could have had it. Myles has the opportunity where he is going to be a pin the ears back pass rusher week in, week out. And, as hopefully this Browns defensive line gets better on the interior with the addition of a player like Jadeveon Clowney, at least coming back for 1 year, if not 2, the development of players like Alex Wright, Perion Winfrey, being commensurate to his level. So where they're not just going to say as an offense, I don't care who sacks the quarterback, but if it's 95, we're just running the ball every play from here on out. So we'll see. But I definitely think it's an interesting discussion. I think it's a worthy discussion from the play he's had. And the other thing is, there's a little flash to Myles, but compared to other edge rushers in the NFL, there's not really a lot of flash. I think but in the Bears game where he had 5 sacks at the end, he was kind of like, well, I don't have any more moves. He's like the guy at the club when the girl wants to dance with him for a second song. He's like, nah, man. He's like, I gave you all I got, girl.
I'm all out, bro.
Well, I was similar to that. So it'd be like, oh, do you need a drink? Let's go get a drink. So, we'll step off the floor. So God forbid you see somebody else dancing really good and our time here is over with. I think at that point, Myles was done. He didn't have much left. Maybe the Dungeons and Dragons will lead to some celebrations. I don't even know how that would work, but who knows, maybe. But it's a fun conversation to have because you look at this Browns roster the way it is currently. Maybe a little early for Nick, and it's tough for running back because of the longevity. I think maybe a lot of his field, Joe Bitonio is probably headed there someday. Go ahead.
And by the way, we're going to get to that. You know, we talked about the defensive line. I think it's time we cross on over, get to the offensive line. We just looked at some of that. So keep it locked. We got some of that coming up as well.
And we're going to continue to do this. Obviously, look, quarterbacks we're probably going to save to the very end because there's a lot that's going on here that would involve that. But, you know, this is stuff we get to do in the offseason. And we've had really some fun with that. We're going to have to put a bow on this here. They're getting on us about time because, look, and it's key. And the thing is we've noticed, and there's so much research done, that when you get towards the ends of these type of things, you're basically just talking to each other. Well, you can hit end and just do that after you're done. So we've had a pleasure here today. We have gotten into talking about the top pass rushers in the AFC North. Garrett Bush has maybe disengaged himself from the entire Cleveland Browns fan base by choosing a Yinzer. But I do believe he brought a fair case, and it certainly would not be thrown out of court. It would not be thrown out in front of a district attorney. We had a lot of fun here today, and whether or not Myles Garrett eventually could make the Hall of Fame. So with that, we've spoken about a ton. Appreciate all of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen. We appreciate all the support here as we begin this new venture together. Garrett's got a lot going on his plate as well outside of Locked On Browns, but we're making it pop in here as well. So always a pleasure for everybody there. Make sure Locked On Browns is your first listen day in, day out. Make sure you obviously subscribe to the podcast on whatever app you use. YouTube, we need those subscriptions. Please take care of that for us. Thank you all so much. And with that, this has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LOB. Let's go Browns.